Alright everyone, it's time for Occult Literature, video number 314, Dionysos and Immortality. There will be a link in the description of my edition of this work on Amazon. Second and third links to my books blogs. This is definitely an academic work. It's a look at ancient Greek history insofar as their conception of death, of the afterlife, of, sort of Elysium and Hades and all of these attendant things. It gets into Homer a lot into the Odyssey especially, and some of the depictions of hell, essentially, the underworld that they had then, and traces it up through the really archaic period before Greece really had anything going on there and was loose tribes, all the way up through, Athens and so forth, and how actually the commercial and social nature of the culture there and its expansion, especially in trade, markedly changed the religion over time. Now this is 39 pages long, so it's a reasonably short work, but it's very dense. It's one of the Ingersoll lectures, actually, that have been given at Harvard most years for, I think, 120 years or something like that. Actually, as part of a grant that they received, initially $500 to sponsor basically lectures on a rolling basis on subjects like this. This is one of the better ones. I've read several of the Ingersoll lectures. Actually, I think I've edited a couple of them as well. Anyway, if you look at the Bacchic cult and its rise throughout time, the insinuation is that basically it arises against a backdrop that the expansion of the idea of immortality to encompass sort of the dying in glory and going to Elysium thing initially is relatively, in the Dorian period, really isn't a thing. The underworld is sort of a murky mire, a dark, humid, swampy place, sort of like, you could think of the river Styx, from, ironic, or is it Acheron? I can't remember which one's the one that's more gloomy, and then one of them is where the wrathful sinners, I think Styx actually is where the wrathful go. Just, again, ironic. Maybe it was Acheron, and the souls of the dead are sort of crossing over there, and it's just a dark, gloomy place in general, separating the outer and inner layers of hell, if I remember correctly. I haven't read Dante in a while, so, forgive me. But anyway, that's basically the conception. The idea was that they're really, the idea of going anywhere that was particularly pleasant once you died was reserved for the offspring of gods and for really particularly exceptional, heroic individuals. It transmogrifies over time, though, because in that period, you've got an aristocratic system. Over time, over the next few hundred years, philosophy and culture, as mercantilism expands, you've got basically a skilled middle class. People don't want to believe, hey, I'm living this nice life, I've got my wine, women, and song, I'm not an aristocrat, but I'm a trader, whatever, I'm doing well, I've got skills, I'm semi-literate. Why the fuck is it, why would the gods condemn me to this gloomy afterlife where I just sort of wander around in the toadstools for the rest of time? It doesn't sound pleasant. And so you get an outgrowth of the idea that virtue is involved rather than simply being the offspring of a god or particularly heroic. And then you get these mystery groups like the cult of Dionysos. By the way, cult is a loaded term nowadays, and it wasn't really in academic parlance initially. You get these mystery schools that teach you about basically, they had their hidden rites, not all of which are fully accounted for, to achieve basically ascendance, enlightenment, to make yourself as one of the gods. You get sort of a proto-reincarnatory belief system at some points, where death isn't really the end per se. You get an idea of asceticism in some cases, but then you also get like the orgiastic rites of Bacchus, where adherents are frolicking through the woods naked and getting wasted and having orgies and so forth as part of their religious actual conceptualization of what they're supposed to do, specifically under Bacchus, this Dionysus, this particular god of wine, also of madness, if I remember correctly, and enjoying yourself, theater and so forth. The arts, things of that nature, things of a pleasant quality. People, I guess, got it in their mind, hey, why would all of these things be celebrated, but then when you die, you just are in gloom forever. You can't eat, you can't sleep, you can't do anything, you just wander around as a shade in this endless swamp, missing everyone you ever knew, and it must have been very bizarre. It's funny because this actually parallels, I noted, other religious systems over time. Oftentimes, a lot of the older religions, there was a lot of doom and gloom and so forth. Death was looked upon, if not as a negative thing, not as something that you would be rewarded in. Like, even if you were particularly virtuous, you never sinned or whatever concept they had. You were virtuous, you did good things, you were successful. had a good life, your children, you were loving, that you ended up in the same place arguably as someone that was not particularly skilled or virtuous, the only exception being like if you were an outright lunatic murderer, then you'd be punished more, but that there was no reward. You weren't punished, but you weren't rewarded either. People got it in their heads that maybe there should be a reward. And of course then you have the ecstatic rites of Dionysos. Now, of course, they're their own reward. You know, you're having orgies and listening to music and drinking and stuff and partying in caves. Well, at least they died happy, I suppose. Very interesting work. Highly recommended if you're into antiquities, ancient religions, especially anything to do with ancient Greece and sort of that evolution over several hundred years as Greece came out of what essentially was darkness, was obscurity, congeals, and you get the rise of the philosophers and all of these other wonderful things, and also, more importantly, commerce. Trade and travel, people influenced by other religions as well to an extent, Greek religion influencing them, of course, with the rise of Rome later, certainly. Very, very interesting to look at the historicity of that. Again, link in the description of my edition of this work on Amazon, second and third links to my books blogs. That's about all. Peace out.